Every year, you hear some members of the local media express a desire to skip preseason. They don't enjoy it. I happen to be one of those guys that really enjoys it. Perhaps it's an extension of the draft season and getting a chance to see somebody make a name for themselves that you don't expect to see make a name for themselves. That might be the first and most important thing that I'll be watching Saturday night, which is to say I'll be watching for a player that pops. I remember Michael Pierce, just in a few series as an undrafted free agent. I think he was wearing 78. I could be wrong on that. But I remember watching that game, that preseason game on television, and Michael Pierce just jumping off the screen. Something similar happened a few years later when we watched Patrick McCary. You could tell right away he was different. It wasn't too big for him. I think they started him at center. They played him at right guard in that first game or two at preseason. So somebody Saturday night is going to pop. There's a pretty good chance of that. That's the first thing I'll be looking for. Is who jumps out perhaps as someone we don't expect to make a name for himself. As far as some things more specific, I'll be interested to watch. Probably the first thing I'll be making notes on as I watch it are the offensive personnel groupings and alignment. I'm curious to see whether or not Todd Monken utilizes any two-back sets, how he uses his tight ends. We'll probably see a fair amount of Charlie Kolar and Travis Vokolek. Both guys are huge. Kolar and Vokolek are 6'6" and 6'7", respectively, around 260. If you remember the big tight end that Monken had at Georgia, who really gives new meaning to the word big. He's a veritable Nephilim. You have to imagine that Monken might expect Vokolek or even Charlie Kolar to step up in that role. Charlie Kolar is someone I really like as a pass catcher. So I'm very curious to begin with to see how Monken uses these tight ends, and I think those are the two we'll see. I don't think we'll see likely. In line as blockers, perhaps in the backfield as part of a two-back set, but also splitting them out wide. See how they do receiving the football, let's say on screens, and how they block for screens. I think that's going to be a big part of the Ravens' offense. Late motions from an inline tight end out wide, split him out, and try to hit a screen with a tight end out front blocking. As far as the run game, certainly Keaton Mitchell has raised some eyebrows, and folks are excited to see what he can do. In general, I want to see some of the blocking schemes that are employed Saturday night, whether they run a lot of inside zone, how effective they are at getting Keaton Mitchell outside where he does excel. How effective is the offense and Todd Monken's scheme in getting blockers out in front of a back like Keaton Mitchell on the perimeter? Speaking on the subject of undrafted free agents, the offensive line is certainly a position group that I'll be watching to see if anyone pops, as we talked about earlier. Outside of Patrick McCary, I'm not sure I have a clear picture of who the Ravens see as backing up the center position. Very excited to watch Daniel Fa'alele at right tackle. It would not shock me to see him push Morgan Moses at some point in the season, perhaps not to start the season, at the right tackle position. I want to see Ben Cleveland at right guard. That is his natural position. At this point, it sounds like they have him sort of slotted in as the backup right guard, and that's just about it. But you never know. You could see him take some snaps at left guard. Mulisala Amabe Laulu is a guy that we'll be watching playing left guard. Perhaps they'll give him some time at right guard as well. Of course, he and John Simpson, another guy that we'll be watching, are in a competition for those starting reps, at least in practice. My sense is they're going to see if somebody jumps up and grabs that. And if no one does, then they have Patrick McCary, who's probably the best option at left guard, at least right now, the way it seems. Another wild card, and this is one of my favorite Ravens, Pat Ricard. That's going to be fun to see if they actually work him in at left guard. In addition to the undrafted center from Connecticut, just watch all along the offensive line to see if anybody stands out to you, as they did bring in a fair amount of offensive line in free agency. I'm very excited to watch the outside linebacker position. Jeremiah Moon, a second-year player, I think he spent some time on the practice squad last year, is someone who appeared to play fast and physical and to have made a jump in this second year when I watched him at that Saturday live practice. He certainly looks the part just long, physically well put together, 6'5", 255. What I'm really watching from him and the other outside linebackers is whether or not they can play the run effectively. If they're getting moved, driven off the ball, how well do they set the edge? Are they able to fit into this defensive scheme? That would be such a big bonus if he could be used rotationally this year for the Ravens. And again, to me, it boils down to, can he stop the run? He's a gifted athlete. And perhaps with the addition of Dr. Rush, maybe that turns into a guy in rotation that'll get you 2, 3, 4 sacks this year and not have there be a drop-off in the run game. So I'm very excited to watch Jeremiah Moon. I'm just as excited, if not even a bit more excited, to watch Tavius Robinson. My expectation is that we might see him look a little lost out there. But keep an eye on him, not just this Saturday, but all 3 weeks of the preseason. I think you'll see noticeable improvement from preseason week 1, preseason week 2, preseason week 3. In other words, by the end of preseason, I think we will view him differently than perhaps we'll view him after week 1. And we will see him as somebody who's on the ascent and perhaps has a very high ceiling moving forward. Of course, like most everyone else, I'm excited to see this offense, though we don't expect to see it fully played out. We will get a sense, I imagine, of its pace, in particular as we watch the quarterbacks. I want to see how well each of these quarterbacks runs the offense. In short, do they look like they're in command of the offense? So far as the wide receivers, just like everyone else, I'm curious about wide receiver 5 through 8, let's say, when we're talking about guys who make the team versus guys who sit the practice squad. Much of that comes down to special teams. So while that's difficult to get an eye on TV, going back and watching it, that's something I'll be taking notes on as well, is how do these younger guys, these wideouts in particular, look on special teams. Doesn't seem as if we're going to get a chance to watch Trenton Simpson. That's unfortunate. Of course, there is no expectation that we'll see Lamar Jackson on the field, but I do expect him to be more involved than ever in the preseason. Be on the lookout for Lamar as a play caller at some point in this preseason, where Monken gives him the responsibility of calling the plays for a series or two at least, and certainly they will be going over with a fine-tooth comb each of these plays post-game on tape, breaking each defensive look down structurally. He's certainly somebody I'm looking forward to watching. I will watch closely the defensive line. In my opinion, that is a position group that needs strengthening so far as it relates to depth. So I'm watching very closely the defensive line Saturday night, in particular the undrafted free agents. The cornerback position perhaps bears closest watching and scrutiny. Very excited to watch these younger players, Kyu Blue Kelly, Kayvon Seymour, Jalen Armour-Davis in particular. I'm sure I'm leaving some guys out, but I'm really excited to watch Ardarius Washington. Have been a big fan of his since college. Was super excited about us picking him up, so I'm really rooting for him, as he too is one of my favorite Ravens. Let me know in the comments what you'll be watching, what you hope to see or expect to see this Saturday night when the Ravens play their first preseason game.